I have often thought that the heaviest thing in any room is the thing we do not see, the unseen weight laid upon every human soul. We fret about the burden of schedules, reputation, and finance, but the true gravity is nearer than breath, the everlasting destiny quietly gathering mass within each person you and I meet. Our age is busy with lightness, with amusements that glitter and vanish like foam. Yet beneath the foam is an ocean. Beneath the clever jest is a heart that will endure when suns burn out. If we once recognize this, we should handle one another as men handle priceless glass, with reverence and carefulness, not because we are fragile only, but because we are destined to be splendid. The lightest smile, the briefest slight, the smallest act of love, all are weights placed upon an immortal scale, tilting a story that will not end. When I speak of glory, I do not mean the sort that clings to newspaper columns or applause at a well-timed remark. I mean that solemn and joyful recognition by our Maker, that "well done," which a child longs to hear from his father, and, faintly, from all authority ever after. Even our vanity is a spoiled memory of this honest desire to be affirmed by the One, whose opinion created reality in the first place. The soul aches to be noticed by love, not for flattery, but for homecoming. Our earthly laurels, which seem thick as laurel hedges in the spring, wither swiftly. The leaves of God's commendation are evergreen. This longing for approval is accompanied by another, to be changed. I am not satisfied with being merely excused. I want to be restored. If the sun rises and I am yet the same small creature, resentments buzzing like flies in the room of my heart, then morning has not done its full work. Glory implies transformation, not a paint brushed over the old wood, but the wood taken into the fire until it glows. When iron rests in flame, the flame does not become iron. The iron becomes luminous. So too with sanctity. We do not absorb God. We are inducted into His light, which neither flatters our stains nor despairs of them, but burns until the metal sings. Yet the word I have chosen is wait. It is an odd word for what is airy and bright, but the soul, even when illumined, is not a soap bubble drifting toward some celestial ceiling. Glory is heavy, because reality is heavy. Eternity will not bow to our preferences. We must bow to it. It is fashionable to imagine heaven as a vapor, an endless extension of Sunday afternoons with pleasant weather. But if the Scriptures are to be trusted, heaven is more solid than stone, more substantial than the granite that bruises your knee. We inhabit shadows now. We shall one day inhabit the thing that casts them. The greater reality presses upon us, and it presses with weight. To live with this in view is to discover that there are no ordinary encounters. I have never shaken hands with a mere mortal. The man who jostled me on the pavement, the woman whose name I have forgotten at tea, the child who laughed too loudly in the pew, each is on the way to becoming a creature whom, if you saw now as he might be then, you would be tempted to worship, or else a ruin so appalling that even nightmares grow pale beside it. There are no small people. There are only people on their way to greatness or to disfigurement. This is why kindness is not a social garnish, but a moral necessity. We traffic daily in immortal materials. Our pleasures, even the most innocent, are signposts, not homes. I do not belittle the bird's hymn at dawn, the power of music to open a window in the mind, or the sea's unanswerable hush. These are not to be despised. They are to be pursued, and, at the threshold, surrendered. The sweetness of strawberry jam on a child's toast is not the kingdom. It is an aroma coming from a kitchen we have not yet entered. Our error is to grip the scent and scold the steam for evaporating. Desire is meant to lift, not to imprison. If nothing in this world can satisfy a particular species of longing, it is not because the longing is false, but because we are built for a larger table. But how, you will ask, does one carry such thoughts without being crushed by their seriousness? The remedy is not stoic sternness, God spare us from that arid pride, but worship. In worship, I learn the proper angle of my soul toward the sun. I am neither to swagger as if the light were mine, nor to crawl as if I were refuse. I am to stand and receive, as a flower turns and drinks the morning. Worship cures both conceit and despair. Conceit by reminding me that the light is borrowed. Despair by assuring me that the light is offered. Here we stumble upon the cross, which is the paradox at the center of every Christian sentence. The cross is the door through which glory enters the world without flattering it. My sin is not airbrushed. It is forgiven at a cost which only God could meet and only love would pay. I am not summoned to a vague optimism, but to a renovation, the carpenter of Nazareth, remaking the house he purchased with his own blood. Mercy is not a sentimental shrug. It is a fire that cleanses. And because of the resurrection, that fire does not end in ash, but in mourning. Glory is not a delusion for the timid, but the sunrise for those who have walked through night. Consider also the ethics that fall from this height as rain falls to earth. If my neighbor is an immortal in the making, I must abstain from cheap laughter at his expense. Sarcasm becomes a species of vandalism. To instruct a child is to chisel at marble that will not crack with time. To keep a promise is to hammer a nail into beams that will hold beyond the collapse of empires. To forgive is to cooperate with the architect who is restoring the very house I once tried to burn. Even celebrations change their tone. Feasts become rehearsals for a greater table. Brides and grooms enact upon a small stage a comedy and tragedy, whose last act is joy. I confess, too, that fear haunts this doctrine. If weight there be, what if I drop it? What if I fail to carry my appointed burden of love to the end? The answer is not that I am strong, but that God is. He knows we are dust. He also knows what music He intends to draw from our dust. To rely upon grace is not to become passive. It is to consent to be lifted. The yoke is easy, not because the task is trivial, but because the stronger neck bears most of it. When at last we hear our true name spoken, known fully by the one who has always known us, the weight will be transfigured into delight, as a pack becomes wings. Let us then accept the sober happiness of our calling. Let us treat moments as seeds and words as tools. Let us not scorn beauty when it whistles through the hedge, nor mistake the hedge for home. A man may live his life collecting small coins of comfort and die bankrupt of joy. Another, giving away what little he has to help a fellow pilgrim, will wake to find that he owns a kingdom he never earned. The calculus of heaven is odd to our accountants, but it is reliable. The mercy you sow is the harvest you cannot count until autumn breaks upon eternity. And when we falter, and we shall, let us return quickly to the fountain. The sacrament, the scriptures, the quiet hour when one kneels and speaks with God as honestly as a beggar asks for bread. These are the ropes by which a man climbs. Glory is not seized. It is bestowed upon the empty hands which have finally stopped pretending to be full. We were made for more than the newspaper and the mirror. We were made to mirror the Maker, until every act becomes a small spark answering the great fire. You see, when I speak of the weight of glory, I am not conjuring some abstract theology fit only for dusty shelves. I am speaking of something that presses upon us daily, often without our awareness. The ordinary errands of life, the buying of bread, the writing of a letter, the quiet folding of laundry, are freighted with an eternal seriousness, because the doer is immortal. The smallest kindness, the smallest cruelty, will echo into halls far vaster than these. We stumble through our days half asleep, but if once the curtain were pulled back and we beheld the true stature of the souls around us, we would either fall at their feet in reverence or shrink away in horror. And here lies the great test of our age, the temptation to triviality. Modern life whispers that nothing is truly at stake. It reduces man to appetite and accident, his destiny no greater than dust, his worth measurable only by economics or pleasure. Yet if Christianity is true, then every desk, every train station, every crowded street is already thronged with immortals in the making. The street sweeper may one day outshine the stars. The factory worker may, in glory, command a beauty that all poets fail to describe. It is not a small thing, therefore, to look into another's eyes. We gaze, however dimly, upon an eternal mystery. This recognition ought not lead us to despair, but to responsibility. To think that my words may strengthen another toward heaven, or wound him toward ruin, what weight this lays upon the tongue! Speech becomes a holy fire, and silence a discipline. Even laughter must be baptized. Not that we should live in grim solemnity, as though heaven were a monastery of frowns. Rather, we should live in joyful vigilance, aware that all our mirth and jest should taste faintly of the coming feast. A laughter that forgets eternity grows thin, a laughter that remembers it rings like a bell from some higher tower. But let me return again to our own longing for glory. The soul does not only desire approval or transformation, it desires belonging. We wish to be woven into something greater than ourselves, to pass from the antechamber into the hall. Every fellowship we cherish on earth is but an echo of that greater communion. The warmth of friendship, the fierce loyalty of family, the tender gaze of lovers, all are earthly rehearsals. And when the final curtain rises, the I, that often feels alone, will find itself gathered into a harmony where individuality is not erased, but fulfilled. For in God's music, each note matters, and the song would be diminished if any were missing. If only we believed this with more conviction, our treatment of others would change beyond recognition. Gossip would dry upon our tongues, contempt would wither. We would tremble at the thought of scorning an image of God. And we would rejoice, even in secret, to serve the lowliest of men, for he is not lowly for long. To wash the feet of another is no humiliation, when one knows those feet are bound for eternity. Here also lies the paradox. We are both weightless and heavy. In ourselves, frail as grass, a puff of wind can undo us. And yet in God's design, we carry a dignity that makes angels marvel. This is why the Incarnation is not only the center of our faith, but also the safeguard of our dignity. God became man. He wore our very flesh, with its hunger and fatigue, its laughter and tears. In doing so, he hallowed the human frame forever. From Bethlehem onward, it is no blasphemy to believe that man is meant for glory. It would be blasphemy to doubt it. Therefore, our task is to live as apprentices of glory, not to seize it, for that would be pride, but to receive it, for that is grace. Each act of love is a rehearsal for heaven. Each renunciation of sin is a chiseling away of stone. Each prayer is a whisper into eternity, and each forgiveness is a laying down of bricks upon the road that leads home. One day we shall awaken to find that what we had called burden was in truth preparation for flight, that the weight upon our shoulders had become the strength in our wings. For the promise is not that we shall be dissolved into nothingness, but that we shall be remade into splendor. Our destiny is not a fading into silence, but a rising into music. And when, at last, the veil is torn away and glory floods the chamber, we shall recognize one another, not with the awkwardness of strangers, but with the glad cry of travelers who find at the journey's end that they have been companions all along. If glory is indeed our destiny, then how should we live in the meantime? This is the great question. For we are not yet what we shall be. We live between promise and fulfillment, between seed and harvest. And in this interval, life often feels more like exile than arrival. Our hearts are restless because they were built for a country we have not yet seen. The psalmist likens us to pilgrims passing through a valley of tears, and yet even here, in this shadowed land, the glory to come already whispers to us. One hears it in the ache of beauty. Why does a sunrise move us so deeply? Why does music pierce the heart like a sword made of light? Why does love, so fragile, so easily broken, nonetheless convince us that it is the most real thing in the universe? These are not accidents. They are signals, beams of light slipping through the shutters of our present home, reminding us that the true sun has not yet risen fully upon us. To treat these moments as ultimate is idolatry, but to ignore them as trivial is ingratitude. They are clues, not conclusions. Yet the glory to come is not only about what we shall receive, it is also about what we are becoming now. The Christian life is not mere waiting, it is training. When we forgive, though everything in us cries for vengeance, we are already being shaped into the likeness of Christ. When we endure suffering without surrendering hope, the muscles of eternity are being built in us. When we love the unlovely, we taste in advance the very love that God has lavished upon us. Every day is apprenticeship. And make no mistake, the stakes are high. For if glory is heavy, then so too is its opposite. To reject God is not to drift into harmless nothingness, but to slide into a ruin more enduring than marble. Just as heaven is more real than earth, so too hell is more terrible than our worst imaginings. It is the shadow of glory, twisted inward, where the soul folds in upon itself forever. That is why indifference is so dangerous. Every choice is a step toward radiance or ruin. But here lies our consolation. The burden of carrying this weight is not ours alone. Christ himself bears it with us. He is both the author and the finisher of our story. If I falter, his grip does not loosen. If I stumble, his strength is not diminished. The weight that threatens to crush me is transfigured into the very weight that lifts me, because his yoke is easy and his burden light. He does not merely command us to glory, he carries us into it. Therefore, let us not be deceived by the apparent smallness of our lives. The parent who prays over a sleeping child, the laborer who does his work honestly, though no one thanks him, the elderly woman who whispers a psalm when her strength is nearly gone, each of these is a chapter in the great story of God's glory. Their deeds may never be recorded in history books, but eternity keeps its own chronicles. And on the day of unveiling, these seemingly small acts will blaze like constellations. The weight of glory, then, is not meant to crush us, but to steady us. It reminds us that nothing is wasted. Our sufferings, our joys, our longings, our labors, all are woven into a tapestry whose full pattern we cannot yet see. And one day, when the veil is lifted, we shall not only see it, we shall wear it, we shall shine with it. And in that moment, when we hear our true name spoken by the one who has always known us, we shall finally understand that every shadow was cast by a greater light. We shall look back upon the long road and see that glory was not only waiting at the end, but walking with us all along. The word glory does not simply denote a radiant future. It also calls us to a present seriousness about how we regard one another. For every soul you meet, however commonplace, is on an eternal trajectory. Imagine what it means that you have never once spoken to a mere mortal. The boy idling at the street corner, the clerk behind the counter, the weary man on the train. Each will one day outlast empires, outshine suns, or else descend into a darkness deeper than death. To live with this awareness is to walk through the world as one treading holy ground. This is why love is not optional. It is the air in which eternity breathes. When we mock another, we are not merely making sport. We are tampering with an immortal destiny. When we forgive, we are not merely relieving our conscience. We are cooperating with the very mercy by which worlds are remade. When we give a cup of cold water, or offer a word of encouragement, or pray in secret for a neighbor, we are sowing seeds whose harvest will be reaped in a land where nothing fades. The strange thing about glory is that it is both distant and near. It belongs to the far country, and yet it presses upon us here and now. It will be revealed in fullness when Christ returns, yet it glimmers already in the smile of a child, in the endurance of the saints, in the quiet steadfastness of those who suffer faithfully. We live in a tension between already and not yet. The house is still under construction, but the foundation has been laid. The music is only tuning, but the song has begun. Here, then, is our hope. We do not carry the weight of glory as Atlas carried the heavens, alone and in despair. We carry it as pilgrims, guided and upheld by the one who has already borne our heaviest load, the load of sin, which he nailed to the cross. Because he bore that unbearable burden, the weight of glory is no longer crushing, but ennobling. It is the weight of being loved beyond measure, chosen, forgiven, and destined for joy. So let us live as those preparing for a wedding feast, not a funeral. Let us rehearse for heaven by practicing now what we shall do forever, adoring God and loving one another. Each hymn sung in weakness, each prayer whispered in weariness, each act of patience in traffic, each moment of trust in suffering. They are fragments of eternity breaking into time. And when at last we awaken in that country whose morning knows no evening, the glory that once seemed a burden will reveal itself as our delight. We shall be at home, not as strangers looking in through a window, but as children seated at the Father's table. We shall bear the weight, and find that the weight has become wings. If you think closely, you will see that the weight of glory is not only a truth about destiny, it is a truth about identity. So many of us drift through life asking, "Who am I? What am I worth?" The world answers with frail coin. Worth is measured in wealth, in reputation, in beauty, in success. Yet each of these withers like grass at the season's turn. The real answer lies not in what we achieve, but in what God has prepared us to become. You are not simply a collection of appetites and memories, you are an immortal in training. To remember this is to live with both humility and dignity. Humility, because the glory is borrowed. Dignity, because it is real. Now, if this is true, then every sorrow we endure is not wasted. Pain itself, which so often feels meaningless, becomes a tool in the hands of the sculptor. As the rough stone must be struck again and again before the figure emerges, so too the blows of circumstance carve us into something we scarcely recognize, but God already sees. One day we shall thank Him for the chisel as much as for the caress, because both were shaping us for radiance. Our small daily choices also take on eternal weight. A whispered prayer in the night may, in the hidden arithmetic of heaven, outweigh the rise and fall of kingdoms. A gesture of mercy to an enemy may count more heavily than the most celebrated victories of generals. The scales of eternity do not weigh as ours do, and so we must never say, "This act is too small to matter." For in the kingdom, mustard seeds grow into trees, and a widow's mite outweighs a king's treasury. Do you see, then, why the Christian faith is neither casual optimism nor grim despair? It is a sober joy, a glad seriousness. We are not invited to frivolity, as though eternity were a pleasant game, nor are we condemned to hopeless toil. Rather, we are summoned to a pilgrimage whose end is glory, and whose road is already sprinkled with foretastes of that end. To treat life otherwise, to treat it as though it were light, as though nothing really mattered, is to refuse the very dignity God has bestowed upon us. I return once more to the thought that the heaviest thing in any room is the unseen soul. If you believe this, you cannot remain indifferent. You cannot speak carelessly, or love half-heartedly, or despise secretly. For the person beside you, however dull, however exasperating, however ordinary, may one day blaze with a splendor that would blind your present eyes. And you yourself are called to the same. Therefore, let us walk gently, speak reverently, love boldly. For the weight we carry is the very promise of God, and that promise is nothing less than eternal glory. To bear the weight of glory is, in one sense, to awaken from forgetfulness. For the world is forever trying to lull us into sleep, into thinking that all that exists is what can be counted, purchased, or consumed. But the Christian faith shakes us awake and whispers, "You were made for more. You are not merely passing through time. You are being prepared for eternity." What you do with your moments is chiseling the form your soul will one day display. Think of it. Each act of honesty strengthens the beams of a house that will stand forever. Each cowardice weakens them. Each glance of compassion polishes the mirror in which God's light will shine. Each act of self-selfishness clouds it. Nothing is neutral. Every word, every silence, every kindness and cruelty, all are weighty. If only we saw this clearly, we would move through life with a new gravity, a sacred seriousness that never quenches joy but deepens it. For joy, too, is part of glory, not the shallow joy of distraction, but the profound joy that wells up when we glimpse our true home. You have perhaps felt it, a sudden ache of beauty at the sound of music, or the sight of a child at play, or the touch of a hand in love. That pang, that piercing sweetness, is the soul remembering what it was made for. Joy is never satisfied with itself. It points beyond, as a bird's song hints at a forest still unseen. And when at last we enter that forest, when the hints resolve into vision, then joy will not only surprise us, it will possess us. The hidden immortality in every soul also demands courage, for to believe you are immortal is to live differently than if you were dust. You cannot be careless with your own being. You cannot despise your body, for it is the seed of a resurrected body. You cannot degrade your mind, for it was crafted to behold truth. You cannot poison your spirit with bitterness, for it was designed to breathe the air of heaven. You are, even now, an heir of eternity. And what of our neighbors? They too bear this weight. The poor man in rags, the woman overlooked by society, the awkward child, all are immortal. Their dignity is not conferred by the world, but by God. To serve them, then, is to serve Christ in disguise, and one day the disguise will fall away, and the radiance will startle us. What shame if we failed to love them when they were near us in humility, only to discover their eternal stature when all masks are removed. So let us live as those who expect glory, not with arrogance, but with anticipation, not with presumption, but with gratitude. Let us labor faithfully, suffer patiently, and love extravagantly. For the crown prepared for us is weighty, and the hand that places it upon our brow is pierced. And now, as I draw these reflections to a close, let me gather together the threads we have traced. The weight of glory is not a burden we can shrug off, nor is it an ornament we may choose to wear or discard at will. It is the destiny into which each soul is moving, silently and inexorably. Whether we live in awareness of it or not, the truth remains. We are creatures bound for eternity. The only question is whether that eternity shall be clothed in splendor or shadow. This realization should awaken both humility and wonder. Humility, because the glory is never our own achievement, but always God's gift. Wonder, because the gift is more than we could have dared to imagine. If all our highest longings, all our deepest homesickness, all the most piercing joys of life are but hints and shadows, then what must the reality be? If the candle is so lovely, what of the sunrise? If the echo stirs the heart, what will the voice itself do? Our lives, then, are not trivial. Each day carries the weight of eternity. Each choice bends the soul closer to its true form. To speak kindly, to forgive an injury, to endure suffering with faith, to lift the fallen, to guard purity, to love God, these are not small things. They are rehearsals for heaven. They are the beginnings of the music we shall one day sing in full harmony. I have often said there are no ordinary people. You have never met a mere mortal. Nations, empires, civilizations, these are mortal, and their life is but the life of a gnat compared with the life of the soul. But the neighbor you brush past in the street, the stranger who stands beside you in the queue, the friend with whom you share a meal, each is a being who will live forever. If we grasped this truth, our conduct toward one another would change forever. We would bow in reverence, not before titles or crowns, but before the quiet dignity of the human soul, for each is destined either for unimaginable glory or unthinkable ruin. And here we return to the heart of the gospel, that Christ himself entered our frailty, bore our sins, and opened the way of glory to us. The weight of glory is not ours to earn, but ours to receive. He bore upon his shoulders the crushing weight of our guilt, so that we might bear instead the radiant weight of his approval. He was pierced that we might be healed. He was forsaken that we might be welcomed. He was shamed that we might be crowned. To believe this is to step already into the dawn of immortality. So let us not live lightly, as though time were cheap and eternity a fable. Let us walk with reverence, speak with grace, love with patience, and hope with endurance. For we are surrounded by immortals. We ourselves are immortals in the making. And one day, when the trumpet sounds and the heavens are rolled back, we shall awaken to find that the weight we carried was never a burden but a glory, and that glory, once hidden, has now become our everlasting home. If these reflections have stirred something within you, I invite you, dear friends, to journey further with us. Do like this video, leave your thoughts in the comments, share it with those who may need its reminder, and subscribe to our channel so that together we may continue to ponder the eternal truths which give meaning to our fleeting days.